Welcome, listeners, to The Life and Crimes of Ted Bundy. I'm James Whitaker, joined, as always, by Emily Carter. Before we dive into this horrific killer, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our show. Also, if you see the donate button and feel like giving, please donate to the show to help us keep producing better content for you to listen to. We are a new show, and your support means the world to us. Today's quite a journey. We're digging into the psychology of Ted Bundy. From his chaotic beginnings to the psychological traits that shaped a killer. Emily, what always strikes me about Bundy isn't just the violence, but really the relentless family secrecy from the get-go. Born in a home for unwed mothers, raised to believe his own mother was his sister. Those sorts of foundational lies, they carry a tremendous psychological cost, don't they?
Absolutely, James. I mean, not to get lost in psychobabble here, but secrecy and that sort of family dysfunction can be so destabilizing for a child. And with Bundy, his maternal grandparents became parental figures. But those reports of violence and mental illness in the household, his grandfather, Samuel, allegedly swinging cats by their tails, beating family members. The environment sounds, well, traumatic at best. And even if some relatives disputed the more extreme versions, there's no question Bundy grew up amid confusion and instability.
Right. And the instability wasn't just emotional, was it? His grandmother had severe depression, even undergoing electroconvulsive therapy. And his grandfather, whether or not all accounts are accurate, was still a domineering, sometimes violent presence. I mean, these factors, chronic secrecy, possible abuse, mental illness swirling about, are all pretty potent seeds for psychological trouble later on.
And you know what stuck with me? The Anne Marie Burr case. She disappeared in 1961 when Bundy was just 14, living only a few miles away. Some suggest this unsolved case could be linked to Bundy, though there's never been proof. But that story, to me, is a grim reminder of how early trauma, secrecy, and neighbourhood mysteries can all intersect, sometimes sparking something deeply troubling in a young mind. Bundy always denied it, but the questions linger, don't they? But even before adolescence, there are these outright disturbing behaviours. I mean, the animal cruelty stories, the infamous bit with the knives around his aunt, at age 3, no less. That's not just little kid mischief, it's unsettling. There's this McDonald triad idea, animal cruelty, fire setting, bedwetting, as risk markers for later violence. And Bundy didn't tick every box, but the cruelty and compulsion for control, they're certainly there.
Yeah, exactly. He was a classic case in retrospect, wasn't he? He reportedly set up makeshift traps for other children and liked to scare people. There's control at play, always. In my research on violent offenders, those behaviours, escalating from animals to people, that social withdrawal you see, those are unmistakable red flags that pop up time and again. But with Bundy, they're paired with an odd normality in other areas. He could present as, well, just a shy boy to outsiders. That's the bit that makes him so chilling, I think.
Yeah, I think people want these obvious monsters. But he played the role of an ordinary boy. Mean-spirited, sure, but also just, there. But those dark undercurrents were already flowing. He didn't fit in, turned inwards, and then lashed out in frightening ways when no one was watching. You put all that together and, it's a recipe for something dire down the line, isn't it? Let's talk about feeling alien. Bundy's struggle for acceptance is such a key part of his psychology. He didn't have close friends as a child, often bullied, and that ongoing sense of being left out, it seemed to eat away at him. He found rules in academics and scouting, but socially, he just couldn't connect. And then there's the whole issue of being illegitimate, which he resented deeply. It was like this wound that never closed.
That's right. He craved status and validation, trying to find it through school, possessions, being seen as special by someone, anyone. When children feel like perpetual outsiders, some do everything they can to fit in, others start fantasizing about being above it all, superior. With Bundy, it was the latter. Grandiosity became his protection from humiliation and inferiority. I always find it fascinating and tragic how early rejections can morph into this entitlement and grievance.
Yeah, and also, let's not forget how hard he worked to compensate. He wanted the nice clothes, prestigious roles and admiration, probably to prove he deserved more than he ever felt he got. Those intense efforts to gain status after being left out, those can go awry in a mind already grappling with insecurity and resentment. And it's just so striking, looking back, how these patterns laid the groundwork for what he'd become.
Now, Bundy as an adult is, in the most clinical sense, a walking demonstration of psychopathy, using Hare's psychopathy checklist as a guide. Superficial charm, manipulativeness, total lack of empathy, he checked them all. But it went far beyond grandiose self-worth. The clinical picture that emerges is a nexus of narcissistic and antisocial personality disorder traits, as laid out by both DSM-5 and ICD-10. He genuinely believed he was special, above the law, and certainly above those he hurt.
And, just to throw in the chilling details, Bundy actually worked at a crisis centre, volunteering on the suicide hotline. It's impossible to wrap your head around, isn't it? He helped save lives on one end of the phone, while secretly plotting horrific crimes on the other. That ability to wear a mask, of sincerity, of empathy, that's a defining psychopathic trait. You almost have to see it to believe it.
Indeed, it's what makes the diagnosis so difficult at times. He fooled colleagues, even those trained to spot trouble. Narcissism layered on top of that, needing admiration, seeing himself as unique, utterly lacking in true empathy, it shaped every interaction, every calculated move. Clinically, Bundy was a textbook case. But textbook doesn't really capture the human cost, does it? Let's bring it to theory for a moment. Hans Eysenk's three-factor model of criminal personality: psychoticism, extroversion, neuroticism, or PEN. Bundy scores off the charts on psychoticism. Think coldness, aggression, no empathy. But he was also extremely extroverted, thriving on social stimulation, media attention. He needed thrills. Curiously, his neuroticism appears low. He wasn't emotionally unstable. He was calculated and controlled, almost disturbingly so.
And that's the bit that's so scary, isn't it? High psychoticism plus high extroversion in Eysenk's model is a dangerous combo. A serial killer who actively seeks out risk, enjoys attention, and can absolutely detach from normal human emotion. Someone who can plan, scheme, manipulate, then go out and socialize as though nothing's wrong. That's Bundy, through and through.
I've tracked high PEN profiles in my academic work. Those are the individuals most likely to show patterns of calculated, repeated, violent behavior. Bundy stands as a case study for why those personality dimensions matter so much in forensic psychology. They help us predict patterns, risk, and sometimes prevent escalation if picked up early enough.
So, are psychopaths born or made? It's always the million-pound question. With Bundy, you see both. Possible inherited mental illness on one side, and then you add in years of secrecy, possible abuse, bullying, a fractured home life. All of it simmers together. Some experts say he was born bad, others insist the home environment tipped him over. The developmental psychology research? Well, honestly, it just shows how thorny and complicated these cases are.
And I think that's right, Emily. There are genetic predispositions, mental illness in the family, those early emotional templates from trauma, but nothing happens in a social vacuum. I always remind people, not every child experiencing abuse or secrecy becomes a killer, but for some, those factors stack up disastrously. It really is interaction between biology and upbringing, never just one or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And, not to wander too far, but I once covered a family where secrecy and abuse just built layer upon layer of mistrust and emotional pain. Some went on to lead good lives, others struggled. There's no neat equation. Bundy was, sadly, someone for whom all those early hurdles added up to something monstrous. His manipulations were just, well, terrifying in their complexity. Multiple aliases, impersonating policemen or authority figures, sometimes faking injuries, all just to lure victims. The double life he led is almost literary: smart, charming, and well-liked in public, but privately plotting and executing brutal attacks. The meticulous planning, the masks, literal and psychological, were crucial to his success at evasion.
And in forensic psychology, we call that the mask of sanity. It's a defining feature of psychopathy. Bundy could mimic normalcy so completely that for years people simply didn't suspect him. He seemed too clean-cut, too intelligent, too ordinary. That extreme ability to deceive, the confidence games, the changing of appearances, the calculated tricks, it's essential to understanding why he escaped detection for so long and why his danger was so underestimated.
It's what gives me chills about the whole case, James. He split his life in two so completely that even people who knew him well, his girlfriend, his bosses, never saw the real man beneath. You look at Bundy, you're looking at psychopathy hiding in plain sight. That's, I think, why his case has become a touchstone in studies of human deception and evil.
And then there's the escalation. Bundy evolved from voyeurism and petty theft to brutal rape, murder, even necrophilia. His crimes demonstrate an ever-increasing need for absolute control over victims, over evidence, over the narrative. And the link to romantic rejection, especially with Diane Edwards, is not just a pop psych headline. That breakup really did spark something combustible inside him.
Totally agree. Bundy would revisit his victims' bodies, sometimes grooming or posing them or engaging in unspeakable acts. These post-mortem rituals weren't just about covering tracks. They were about extending control, reliving the moment of power. I've read interviews with survivors who described how calculated, how chillingly unemotional he could be. Crime scene evidence, too, showed a level of organisation and planning that's just, honestly, it's stomach-turning when you read the details.
It's also noteworthy that as the pressure mounted, the scrutiny, the risk, his methods became more frantic, less careful. But throughout, what drove Bundy was the same: the need to possess, to completely dominate, and to destroy. That psychological engine of control, it's at the heart of so many serial offenders' stories.
Diagnosing Bundy posed massive challenges. Was it antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality, possible dissociative episodes? Experts debated for years. He consistently scored at the very top end of the psychopathy scales, 39 out of 40 on the PCR, reportedly. And yet, even then, psychiatrists sometimes struggled to pin down a definitive label, precisely because his manipulative abilities were so exceptional.
You're right. In forensic circles, Bundy's adaptability, his ability to simulate remorse or mental illness, sometimes just to suit the audience or the moment, muddied every evaluation. Remorse, especially, was a sticking point. He expressed none even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Contemporary protocols, more robust criminal profiling, have come a long way, but Bundy's assessments, by modern standards, show just how slippery and confounding a psychopath can be. Today, these cases are dissected with risk assessments, multidisciplinary teams, but back then, much of the field was still catching up.
Yeah, it's sobering to see that, even with the tools we have now, a Bundy-level manipulator could present real difficulties for experts. That's why the case remains so vital in discussions of forensic psychology. He tested the very limits of what psychiatry, and indeed the justice system, could handle at the time.
Bundy's final confessions are disturbing. He continued to blame others: pornography, media violence, society, even suggesting his victims invited abuse. Even on death row he sought to manipulate, doling out partial truths in hopes of delaying execution. There's no real acceptance of guilt, no sense of personal responsibility. His motives, if you can call them that, always circled back to that hunger for power and dominance, never true remorse.
Yeah, and he openly denied any genuine shame, even when it might have helped him. The debate over media, pornography, some bought his arguments, but experts and biographers largely dismissed them as self-serving. He wanted to twist the legacy, to make us look at the wrong things. But the real enduring lesson, I think, is about prevention. Understanding the complex mix of personality, environment, and choices that create people like him. Bundy's life has shaped criminal profiling, helped us build better psychological assessments, spot danger signals earlier, and maybe, just maybe, stop the next mask of sanity from going unnoticed.
Perfectly put, Emily. Well, that's where we leave Ted Bundy for today, a subject who continues to haunt criminology and psychology alike. Thanks, Emily, for sharing your insight, and thank you to everyone listening. We'll be back to examine more dark minds and the lessons they leave behind. Goodbye, Emily.
Thanks so much, James. And thanks to all of you. You keep tuning in, we keep digging deeper. Until next time, take care and goodbye.